Have you experienced it before? Those conversations where the colleague you're giving your notes to just gets upset. All you did was to give a few corrective notes on the presentation. Check a few details here, update the numbers there, double check those cited sources. Just normal feedback, or so you thought, but the reaction took you by surprise. You really upset somebody there. I'm Dawn, and this is Have That Talk. Let's talk about the colleague who takes feedback so personally that you don't even want to give it at all. So you end up appeasing, sugarcoating, tippy-toeing around them, but you're never able to clearly express your thoughts because interacting with this colleague is like walking through a minefield. And the response you're avoiding could be anything along the emotional spectrum, from tears to anger to pushback, or even just silence. And you don't want that. You're trying to be helpful. You're trying to improve the process. You don't want to upset anybody, but instead you hear yourself apologizing, backing away, shifting responsibility, retracting your request. And the original feedback that you wanted to give is back on your side of the table. You leave the meeting feeling dissatisfied and disappointed in the person you wanted to give feedback to, but also in yourself for not standing your ground. But before you blame yourself for being too soft or not being a good enough manager, understand what's going on in the nervous system. When we see that somebody is upset, our first instinct is to go in and want to comfort them. Visible distress is interpreted as some signal that you have caused harm. So you shift into repair mode. You soften the message. You take back your request. You apologize for your delivery. And this is a natural human response. But in your role as manager, it's not helpful. It may not lead to the results that you need to deliver, which is a team that is effective, works well together, and gets stuff done. And dealing with a colleague like this does cost a lot of emotional energy, because you're constantly having to deal with this urge to move in and protect this vulnerable person. It becomes something that you want to avoid. And through the avoidance, it continues to happen. And that is where it begins to have a compounding effect, not just on the individual and the relationship between you, but also across the whole team and the way you work together. People start to notice that this particular individual is singled out. They have special privileges. They have a golden ticket that they can pull out at will and essentially do what they want. And as long as you're letting that happen, this impacts the team's sense of fairness. But before it gets to that point, there are three things that you might want to consider. First of all is bringing your observations about this behavior out into the open. Express the pattern that you've been noticing. Ask what's going on there. And then be clear about the fact that you're not singling out this individual because they're a bad person, but because you're responsible for the whole context of the team. Feed back what those consequences are. For instance, the additional time that's required for any rework, for any stakeholder follow-up that's been missed, or to fill in the gaps in the details that need to be presented. If it was that particular person's responsibility and they didn't deliver, then it becomes the team's responsibility. But everybody else has their own work to do. The individual's behavior has a wider impact. And then invite input to seek a solution. How can we get better here? What is it that you need? And at this point, don't be tempted to step in and offer to take on the work, because it's not your job, it's theirs. So if there's something that they need that you can help facilitate, that's the moment they can ask for it. And at any point when it gets emotional, think about bringing the conversation back to the main track, which is that there's a pattern of behavior that's happening that is impacting the work and impacting the team. And you're here to discuss how to resolve that. That's the main conversation. And it may not feel easy to keep it on that track, because you yourself will be tempted to go off track, to respond to some comment that really sparks your own emotional reaction. Don't go there. Acknowledge what you're seeing, but bring it back to the center. I see that you're upset about this, but it's really important that we find a way forward. And we can only do that when we figure it out together. So you see, having a conversation with a highly emotional person requires you to have an awareness and an understanding of your own emotions and your own emotional responses. So instead of judging, understand how the nervous system can hijack our emotions. Instead of reprimanding the behavior, express how it's impacting the team. And instead of avoiding the conversation, take courage and go in and have that talk. Okay? I'll see you next time.